Welcome to another All Nation Line video. Fall is in the air, the leaves are coming down, and it's time to start thinking about some winter projects. Today I want to discuss a little bit about what I hear sometimes from model railroaders over the years, or hobbyists that are thinking about going into O-scale, where they hesitate somewhat over their ideas of what it costs and space limitations. And so today we're going to do a little program on some assembly of some trucks that you can get in the secondary market relatively cheap. It's a good project to get along and get started in the hobby that requires only a few tools, a little bit of skill, and it's basically a show and tell video. We'll assume that if you obtain a kit to assemble a truck such as the OL kit or even an All Nation Line freight truck, we'll assume that a little cleanup is necessary on the parts. It's quite easy on a wheel set if you have a drill press to use a little sandpaper to touch it up, clean the axle up a little bit. There's a little oxidation on it, and buff up the wheels. Very light 320 paper. The other method you can use, other than doing this by hand, is if you have battery powered electric drill, you can mount that in the chuck and let it turn and clean them up real nice. The next step, of course, is when you have these cleaned up, what you want to do is determine if the truck is insulated. And if you can't see an insulator in there, then the best thing to do is to test and see if there's continuity across the wheel sets. If there is continuity, it's going to short out. So the next thing you need to do is pull off one of the wheels off the axles. The axles were designed in the mid-1940s by Carl, and I have the blueprint for these, and you can see that the center of the axle has the same profile as axles were during that period on freight trucks. It's got the shoulder here, the knurling on each end to press the wheel on, and then of course the ends which go into the journal on the side frames. So once you pull a wheel off, put a plastic insulator in it, you will be able to get a nice press fit back on there. Now, in order to utilize a plastic insulator, you would want to go ahead and open up this hole to a specific diameter. You don't need a reamer to do this. You can use a regular drill because these are die cast, and with a little lubricating on the drill bit and keeping that bit cool, it'll follow right through on that without going off center. But you really need to be able to hold your work when you do that. So I 3D printed a little fixture here where I can just slap that on there like this, hold it and tight in place while I ream the hole. That may be a little complicated for the initial model builder, particularly if they don't have a way of holding the wheel set, but that's part of learning how to modify and get by on the cheap. You know, if you've gotten a truck kit for $10 off of eBay, expect to be able to have to do a little bit of work to put it together. So the first thing you'll note with these parts is there's these little stubs here on each end of the bolster and on the bottom plate. So they actually face each other, and those stubs are intended to maintain the position of your coil springs on your trucks when you put them on. And there's enough tension on these springs whereas you don't need screws, glue, or anything else. These things stay together relatively nicely once you put the wheel sets in. And you'll want to make sure when you put the wheel sets in that you have the insulated wheels on the same side of the side frame. The first step I generally do is I start cleaning up these little stubs here and take them down a little bit so that there's a little more space. And you'll see why in a little bit, because once you put this in, you're going to want to find that it's a tight fit. And if you can get these little stubs much lower in height, these go together a lot easier. The first thing you're going to want to do on these is, what I like to do is I like to clean up the top of these, because you can see the seam when the die cast mold. It's a two-part mold, and you can see the line work on this, and I usually like to clean that up a little bit with the file for looks purposes of doing both, like so. You can see they shine up, but if there's any flash or sharpness sticking up, you want to knock that down. The next step is primarily cleaning the bottom of this side frame. You want to do the bottom, you're going to want to do the top, and you're going to want to file those quite rigorously and get them very smooth. And the more you bring this down a little bit, the easier it is to assemble. Again, you have to remember that these are die cast, so you have a seam in here just like you would when you see the seam across the top and the bottom where the two halves came apart, and this came out of the mold in the die casting machine. So we want to make these surfaces inside here nice and smooth, top, bottom, and sides. And what I generally do, once I'm done with the top and the bottom, I'll take this little triangle file and start smoothing out this section here, and then the section where the actual bolster is riding and going up and down, springing up and down. You want those surfaces nice and smooth with no flash left on there, and you can then take the bolster and hand fit it. You can see how, if it's too tight or you don't want it too loose either, so you don't do any filing on the bolster until you have these surfaces on the side frame cleaned up. And that's not too bad. Might do a little more filing, depends on when we go to fit it together. So the next step is to try to hand fit these pieces in here just to see what our clearances are like. And you can see that this is still not wanting to go in real straight. You know, you can get it in with an angle, but then again, if you try to push this up with the way the springs are going to do it, you're not going to have enough clearance. So typically we take a heavier file that's about the same width, and we start cleaning up these slots right here and getting the flash out of those and making them nice and smooth. And this is sort of a hand fit type of procedure. You're going to not want to take too much off, and you're going to want to do both sides, of course, and you will get a feel for this. And at the same time, you're going to want to also check this part. Don't forget to make sure your holes have clearances. Sometimes there's flash in the holes, and you can get a 440 screw in there when you go to mount it on your freight car. Now, what I did on here, I already filed these down, and I also touched this edge. I narrowed this side and this side a little bit, just because I want to see that it's going to fit in there just perfectly and be able to sit flat, and there's just not going to fight you when you go to put the springs in. So as a note, when you're cleaning these up, you're trying to fit this in, and if it doesn't really, if it fits tight, you can take a little bit more material out right here and up here. The same goes for trying to get this bolster to slide up and down towards the top. Now, you can always take more out here, but you don't want to lose any of your detail on the outside of your side frame, so you don't want to take too much off of there. So it's preferable to go ahead and really take equal amounts off of each side of this bolster. And in addition, what I have done is on these bolsters, I've filed the top down so that it's thinner in this direction, which doesn't take too much away from the detail, but it helps in getting these installed much quicker without them fighting you on the space factor. So you just have to keep trying and fitting these and filing a little bit. Go slow as you go, because you don't want to really go too far. You know, you want to just be able to fit these in. So the next tip I have in order to make these go together easier is once I file these side frames on the inside, I usually take the file and knock this little corner off here and then on the other side. And I just knock that off enough, because when you put these together, you'll see that that is kind of a friction point. And I do the same on the top side of the bolster on this ear and this ear. I'll just knock those off a little bit like this with the smaller file around the corner, take the sharpness off, and they'll go together a lot easier, and you don't lose any detail. There's no trying to do this twist idea to get these to go together. And you'll see in a moment what I mean. Okay, so I have these two side frames with the bolster fitted together, and they're nice and smooth now. You want to pay attention to detail when you do this. Don't turn the side frame around like this and get the springs all in and then discover, oh, my holes are on the wrong side. I do that all the time. So pay attention to detail. And like I said again, what I generally like to do is to test fit these parts to make sure my clearances. Now that one feels a little tight, so I might take a little bit more off the side here like this, and equal amounts generally, and then see that fits in pretty nice now. There's a little bit of wiggle room, that's fine. And what I'm going to show you next is when you put this together with the studs in the right direction, you're going to put this particular part in here, and it's going to go basically like this when you stick your springs in. And once you do that on the first side, then you'll be ready to go ahead and put your wheel sets in. And we're just going to try to real quickly show you here with my fumbling fingers how to put these springs in real quick. Well, that's why I say this is maybe the most aggravating part here, because you got to hold the parts, you got to hold the spring. I sometimes have used a screwdriver, but as you can see, I got my fingernail on that, and I just pop it in like that. Do the next one. Pop it in like that. Hope I don't spring it out into space. Do the third one. And whoop, there it goes. Probably lost that one. It goes in the ether, you'll never see it again. So the third one there doesn't want to cooperate. But after you do a few of these, you get pretty good at it. And there you go. Now that one there is off the stud a little bit. So generally what I'll do is I'll use a little sewing needle, and let me grab that real quick. And we'll try to align that, okay? Except my sewing needle has a little glue on the end of it, so that's not good. Doesn't help me at all. Anyways, I'll go in there and we'll try to realign that, and push it back, it may spring out. In any event, let me correct that. So I don't try to do the videos on these to show a perfect procedure, because this gives you a better idea what you can run into. And in this case, the reason this middle spring probably doesn't want to go over the stub is there's probably a burr, and before I file those down, they're nice and smooth, the spring would go over it. But the trouble is, if you leave those long, you don't really have enough space in here to work with. And so I generally file those down. And if there is a little bit of a burr in there between the studs, you need to clean that up so your coil spring will go around those studs and stay put. So this is the first half of the side frame. And what we'll do now is grab a couple of wheels, and you'll want to turn this over, stick the wheels in here like this, and go ahead and take your other side frame. Remember, it's upside down. You want to have them in the right direction. And of course, I didn't fit this side, so I don't know how this is going to go. And you will note that it's not going to behave the way I want it to, because I did not do two things prior. What I would really like to make sure is on the inside of these corners that I've knocked those corners down a little bit with the file, because getting this second side frame on is a little bit of a challenge if everything is really tight. So I knocked that corner down. I'm going to knock this other corner down real quick. And I probably didn't knock well, I did. I did. I put a little smoothness on the ear of that bolster. I should do the other side here. Hopefully my springs aren't coming out when I do this. So you want to kind of do these things before you start assembling. And now is the time to remember which side is your insulated wheel and get those on the same side of your side frame before you start to go ahead and put your second side frame on. So here's where your alignment, it can get really tough. And as you can see, I have the side frame needs to be turned like this because I have the truck upside down in my hand. So there's these little things that kind of you got to remember, and you're going to want to go like so. You're going to want to make sure that when you do this, you're not going to be dealing with the springs until you get the side frame positioned right. And so you kind of got to go with getting this at an angle. And this is where you kind of have to hand fit these so that it's not fighting you. So to illustrate, rather than trying to put the wheels in and put this second side frame on right away, what you'll want to do is leave the wheels out. See if what conditions are preventing you from slipping this on and over. And as you can see, the distance here is a little too wide, meaning I should probably take out a little more material on the side frame itself. So when you put these on, it should slip right in there, and it's not. It's one of those things where it's going to fight you unless you actually get this filed down to the correct width. So having filed down a little more material and making this edge here much thinner, I can now say that if I put this together like so, it'll fit right over. And I generally don't take this stud off or this stuff because that's the back side of the side frame, keeping your spacing correct. So now that I can do that, I think I can put the trucks in and take that off and facilitate final assembly here. So let's try it. Get my journals lined up, and again, it feels like it's fighting me a little bit. Probably want to coax it. There, it went in just nice. I like how that felt. So now the only thing left is to put the springs in and final assembly here, and we'll have a truck that's ready to roll, and it'll be sprung and ready to be put under your freight car. Just like so. You're ready. Perfect. They roll nice and smooth. In the journals, you could put a little oil in them when you go to put them on the layout. Again, this is a good demonstration of how you can pick up a kit like this, say off of eBay for $10 or $15, and it doesn't cost you a fortune to get into O-scale, and you'll have a really nice looking piece of equipment under your freight car. I did a set of these trucks for my 200-ton flat car that I've been working on, and I've got the sides, I've got the top that's going to go on this, and quite a bit of work to do yet on the model itself, but the trucks really can make the model, and I think they look better than something like a plastic injection molded truck that doesn't have real springs in it.